Hi everyone, welcome back to another lightsaber video. This is part 3 of a 3-video series that I recently started about Luke Skywalker's Return of the Jedi lightsaber hilts. Part 1 was all about the V2 and how the V2 is basically the hero hilt, the main hilt seen throughout the film. And you could go back and watch it if you haven't already done so. I talk about the V2 in detail, how it starts off as Obi-Wan Kenobi's stunt hilt in A New Hope, and how it becomes Luke's hero hilt in Return of the Jedi, and how it ends up looking like this as of today. In the second part, in the part 2 video, I talk about the V3 and how this was also Obi-Wan's stunt hilt in A New Hope, but it became Luke's stunt hilt in Return of the Jedi, and how it was used primarily for the duel scene against Vader at the end of the movie. And again, I talk about how this came to be, what it was used for, how it looks in post-production as opposed to how it looked during filming, and the various kind of copies that were made of the V3, such as the 2 resin copies that were seen in the film. But today I'm going to focus on the third and last one, which is the Yuma, and talk about the lineage of the Yuma and why it's important. So the sequence of filming really kind of started in Elstree Studios. So they built a lot of the practical sets in Elstree, and that's why the earlier parts of the movies primarily use the V2 and the V3, because all of that, in the throne room, pretty much everything, I think, all the interior shots were all done in Elstree. The sandstorm, the desert, that was ultimately deleted. All of that stuff was filmed in Elstree. They then moved later on to Arizona, to Yuma, to film the Sarlacc pit scene. And for that, they needed a short-bladed stunt. They needed a stunt that has literally a blade. This is its actual length. So it's not like the long dueling stunt that the V3 had. But this was needed so that Mark Hamill could swing this around without injuring any of the actors, the crew, everyone who was around him on the skiff in close proximity. So they needed a short-bladed stunt. So for the first time, they machined something from scratch, as opposed to the V2 and the V3, which were kind of old existing hilts used by Obi-Wan that they just kind of modified. This they just built from scratch. They just machined this, and you can see that they made it look very, very similar to both the V2 and the V3. In fact, I think it looks more, to me, a bit more like the V3 possibly, with almost like a V2 style paint job. You can see they tried to make almost like a Graflex clamp, like a machined Graflex clamp, like a control box here with, that's supposed to be the Graflex lever, possibly. And for the first time, they used this triangular D-ring instead of the usual rounded ones. So fans call this the Yuma, and this is in reference to Yuma, Arizona, where these scenes were filmed. But this is the short-bladed stunt used by Luke in the skiff battle. It's worth mentioning that you don't see this in the entire sequence. Pretty much every time Luke is swinging his green lightsaber around on the skiff, yes, it's the Yuma, but like the scene where he catches it when R2 fires it up to him, and he catches the V2. And also there's a couple of other resin stunts used in that scene, which are V3 resins. But I won't go into that because I've already covered that in the previous video. But yeah, mainly he's using the Yuma to fight the bad guys. And then that sequence was done, it was filmed, it was shot, and then they moved production, I think, to California to do some of the indoor scenes. And then that's it. That was kind of principal photography wrapped, and the movie was basically done. And then they kind of moved to ILM to do insert shots, pickup scenes, whatever. So at this point, there's that famous scene where Vader is turning that lightsaber in his hand and says, "I see you have constructed a new lightsaber." Throughout that entire scene, when Luke kind of surrenders to him and is brought to him, he's carrying the V2 and sometimes the V3. But when he says that one phrase, when Vader says that phrase, I think they thought that, well, he can't be kind of looking at this because it clearly doesn't look like it's a new lightsaber. So for that, all they did was they took the Yuma and they really just kind of cleaned up all that paint and gave it a fresh paint job. And they just kind of modified this control box a bit and stuck in a little kind of circuit board. And it became this. This is literally the exact same hilt at a later point in time. This is how it started, as the short-bladed stunt, the Yuma, and this is the "I see you have constructed a new lightsaber." But it is the exact same hilt. And this is the one that Vader is turning over in his hand when he says that to Luke. And that is the only scene where we can see it in this configuration. But you can see how much they cleaned it up. They give it a nice copper paint neck, uniform kind of black rings. And for the first time, we see these brass rails and these horizontal tracks, which is just a vector board. And yeah, that was it. And then one more scene was also filmed, presumably also at ILM. This is the infamous cave scene, which was also deleted. It never made it on the final cut of the movie. This is the scene where Luke is in the cave on Tatooine, building his lightsaber, finishing it up, and he has a vision of Vader speaking to him, and then he just kind of, he's fiddling with the circuit board inside this control box. He closes it up and ignites it for the first time. So that is, again, this exact same hilt, just with a slight modification. You can see from the top is exactly the same, but the control box has underwent some slight alteration. There's now a new step, a new rail underneath the brass rails, which lifts up the card somewhat, and that is to allow, and also of course there's the green and red arrows, and that allows Luke to go like this and reveal this circuit board underneath for him to then be kind of finishing it up. Then he slides this on and powers it on, and we see it ignite green for the first time in the film. Of course, that scene was deleted, so but this is the exact same hilt again. So this is technically a Yuma, just at a later stage in time. So this is really the Yuma lineage. It starts off as the Yuma short-bladed stunt, pickup scene, "I see I've constructed a new lightsaber," and the deleted cave prop. This would be known as the V1 Hero. And I think everyone is familiar with this hilt. This would become the official, or Lucasfilm's official green lightsaber, let's say, for Luke Skywalker. So anytime he's depicted in artwork, in promotional material, museum tours, exhibitions, you name it, whenever it's kind of Luke's Return of the Jedi lightsaber, this is the one that they kind of want you to see. It went on tour in the Mom Tour. It was shown at the Identities exhibition. And it was also adapted in future releases by Disney Plus. And well, Disney, not Disney Plus, sorry, for the sequel trilogy. During The Last Jedi, they made something that resembles it. You can clearly see it's nothing like the V2 or V3. It's got the green and red arrow, it's got the horizontal tracks, the copper or brass neck. So this is the Last Jedi version. I don't have the Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett, but they look very, very similar. These are all based on this exact same hilt. So that is it, really. And that concludes the series of the Luke Skywalker lightsaber. I chose to kind of break it down into three, just to kind of make it easy to understand why there are so many. But essentially, there are kind of three families. The V2 has its own lineage. It is the hero hilt, but it starts off as Obi-Wan's stunt hilt and is used throughout most of the film as a belt hanger mostly. The V3 is Obi-Wan's other stunt hilt, which is used as a long-bladed dueling stunt by Luke. And finally the Yuma, which is a short-bladed stunt that was machined from scratch and was used in the skiff fight scene, but was later modified for a couple of pickup scenes that never really, well, that one did, but that never made it into the final cut. But ironically, this is the iteration that would become the most widely known kind of official representation of Luke Skywalker's Return of the Jedi lightsaber, and that's why it's called the V1 hero, even though the actual hero of the film is really the V2. But there you have it. And that's it, really. Any questions, as usual, feel free to ask. I hope you've enjoyed the series. I hope it wasn't too confusing. As always, yeah, any questions or comments, feel free to leave down below and I'll try to get back to you. Yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.